Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
How are you tonight?
Well enough. Just been recalling a lot of things of my past, honestly.
Oh, really? So
Uh,
this is part 5, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about.
the whole
Um,
entire universe, pretty much what I'm explaining throughout these.
the whole universe.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about all kinds of things. The last show we talked about vampires, which really fascinated me. Um, Tonight we're going to talk about witches and the occult and things like that. We're going to dive into it and see what we can pull out of the rabbit hole, okay?
Gotcha.
So, all right. So, we've talked about the Fae, we've talked about Elven, we've talked about werewolves, vampires, we've talked about reptilians, and
Numerous alien species out there that are either directly connected with the humanoids or living on the fray to come in and out of the planet. You need clearance, no matter what. And they will straight up kill refugees if you crash land. It's kind of brutal.
so how do we get to witches? I mean, witches are kind of maybe similar with the Fae or
I
the
was more or
werewolves.
less thinking the occult because at this point I want to talk about some of these groups behind some of these dealings and some of the things they've been doing hush hush for years now. Some of their ritualistic sacrifices, their get-togethers, their worship of certain darker gods, as you would call them, and what it turns into, what you're actually selling yourself to and what it plans on using you for. It's sometimes that information they never truly get. And maybe sometimes it's just a warning from somebody that's seen some of those lines and mistaken for one of those beings entirely by some. So I'd rather just give a warning to what that could entail. Straight up, well, I really love taking people's dreams, innocence, any power they can take. They can get you to do it willingly, deceptively. They get more
Who's
power
they?
at the spiritual level. Whoever the individual in this case could be, some of these darker arts. Normally, these occult circles are people that use these darker arts that connect in groups, and each of these different little groups have different tiers and connections, and it can go into the Illuminati or even Hollywood or in some of the other places. Just ritualistic, what they were founded on, what it's been connected. It's all part of the party, all part of the show. But it can have some massive implications, literal sacrifices of life, both sexually as in a living sacrifice or actually as in somebody has to be killed just in order to feed some darker being that you're trying to gain praise with when they come upon the world. It's kind of scary with a lot of these occults and just some of the accounts of stories I've heard of fucking people playing and dabbling with some of the darker things, and then I already know. Summon forth something strong enough to where it can actually have a physical presence in your life. And then what happens? Well, what is it going to go after? Well, it depends on the type of being it is. Most of those beings are evil, they're nasty, they're looking at you as a food source. Um, I hear stories of how our livers give them power, fucking just interdimensional beings. Not viewing, they have a whole different society and spectrum of their own in some cases. Just constant worship of these beings and what it turns into. Bloodbath half the time. For what cause? For what end? Sorry about the background noise. A little bit of construction in the area.
Yeah, they're busting up tile or something next door. It's I hope it's not going over the broadcast. If it is, we do apologize. So you kind of dove right in, and you
Mm-hmm.
were basically talking about some of these occult families. Are you talking about generational occult families, or are you talking about groups and like Wiccan groups, Satanist groups? What are you talking about as far as?
Well, it's kind of both. It's from a sociological mindset, you kind of have to view them as similar, just each one has more power, more growth over another. They have a stronger entity that they worship, that they create that power for, gain that power from. A lot of the times, like you could pray to some dark entity that's going to give you the power to destroy your enemies. Well, what happens when you finally get what it wants a chance to be here? It's going to destroy everything you love, and you took out everything else except for freaking you and the specific others, because that's what it told you to do. And all you did was summon something to our world and get duped and used. And there's a lot of people connected to these groups that are dealing with these problems without even realizing it, sacrificing themselves, their energies, their heart, their soul, their blood, their sweat, their tears, just to try to save face for something they were connected to being pulled at the strings by another individual. Turns into some scary shit. I mean, this is like a generalized, like whichever group that may. It could be some lesser. They're still going to be trying to, for the most part, find their targets and do what they have to for whatever entity at hand that they're trying to appease. Think you're muted. Sorry. Don't think of these things. Slow down. Mm-hmm. They'll create cults, and certain higher families will hire individuals who get like-minded within their own little groups to go out and make little things to continue to feeding to these spiritual beings. These they're more like eldritch horrors in some sense. They're just much higher forces of nature would be the best way to describe them, and they're a truer spiritual state. But that doesn't always mean that they're okay with the type of world you exist in. It just depends on the individual, and a lot of people are led astray upon this.
Okay, so the construction is really messing with my concentration. So I'm going
Sorry.
to go ahead and keep letting you talk. But I want you to kind of go through the hierarchy, like like the hierarchy of, say, like, you've got different levels of the occult. You have these
Okay,
lower level
so
people that
you
dabble
got
in
your
it that
your
maybe not.
base small little, say, like you got your bedroom, somebody did it from home, they studied up on their own, decided to do it, and say someday they get, after doing something to prove their faith, get to talk to somebody else and get connected to a slightly larger group just because it falls into their lap, another individual feeling those same energies and those same quells connecting and driving force. Well, at the same time, and then the next level up would be the people that go through and get shit done. They're the ones that grab and go. They're the ones that pay the tolls. They're the ones that get the beatings, do the lashings, and do what master says. Next up there, you got your record keepers and your information, your healers for the specific group. They're the ones that keep the wheel running smoothly. They can be replaced, but it's still pretty nice to be at. Up above that, you got some of your business hierarchs, the ones that are trying to drive the backbone into building new resource towards whatever group goal there is, even though a lot of the times most of these little groups within these chains do not even know about each other, period. Sorry, I feel like an freaking, and then up from there, you got some of the elders that have been in the game for a long enough time that are in retirement that do what they can and are still flowing through, but try their damnedest. Above that is some of the richest families that have been setting it up down and down the rabbit hole, over and through the loops. These different groups, higher and higher up, connected by the same entities of worship, even though the reality is numerous of these smaller groups do not know of the larger groups, thinking they're the head shit when there's others, and vice versa. It turns into a cutthroat little world. And some of the rituals they do are just beyond messed up. I mean, who goes in and takes care of orphans or goes into other countries just to get sacrificed for some demonic being in a ritual? I mean, they got rid of some of their islands and stuff, their pleasure camps for specific groups. I'm pretty sure that was connected to it also within the occult, which then ties back into Hollywood and how Hollywood has to do that, because a lot of the messages they send out are actually supposed to change how we think and act as they try to change us slowly. If you control the manifestation of everyone because you control reality, then you control everything and can do whatever you want.
Right. So basically, there are the elites and the upper echelon of people, families, groups that are trying to control humanity. And they have learned how to use our energy and our intentions for their gain, whichever. But at the end of the day, there's people above them that are also feeding on our energy as well. So you might have some lower level people that are dabbling in the occult who are just curious, and then you've got people that are trying to actually manipulate energy, and then you actually have cults, and then you actually have like Satanist groups, and then you actually have like what Luciferians that are actually into the bloodline families that are really into blood sacrifice and killing and child sacrifice, that are trying to feed where does it go after that?
There's numerous types of sacrifice. These darker entities, a couple of them being demonic, some being the ancients themselves, just misunderstanding their darker selves, not what they've become, and trying to feed into what that was, in some cases. But they'll sacrifice either a living sacrifice is somebody to where they don't have to die, but in the sexual rituals. Normally, for a living sacrifice, a normal sacrifice is somebody that's killed. They need their blood, they need their bone, they need their essence to go to that being to help them gain strength in this world from which we are in. And there's numerous entities within this group that they all kind of pray to outside the schemes of reality, but still deeply connected. This darker circuit.
Okay, well, let's start there. So let's start with tonight. We wanted to talk about witches. Okay, so might you have just a random person who might be actually born from a witch bloodline and might have certain abilities born this way, where they don't really worship anything, they just kind of practice their their magic, and then you might have cults where you actually practice magic in groups and things like that. When is the line drawn to where you are actually now trying to serve a one of these entities that you're talking about? Is there a pact that's made? Is that done in the cult, in the groups? Is that an individual thing, or When does that line get crossed, and who are these? Is there more than one entity? Are each entity, is there a hierarchy within those entities? You know,
Yes. To all of those. I mean, for starters, there's numerous darker entities. As I said, there's a couple of the ancients, which are the numbers who
well,
are being
go ahead and
misunderstood and worshipped too, which most of the time they're just using completely old world. Here's a sacrifice so we don't gain your wrath.
okay,
The
well, let's start with the ancients. Who are the ancients? What kind of magic do they do, or occult stuff? And who are they reporting to? Or are they doing it for themselves? Or tell us about
They're
the ancients.
mostly doing it for themselves. The ones that follow the ancients are trying to follow as old world as they can find, and they worship these beings, which pretty much, in all actuality, each of the ancients is probably an angel or equivalent, just a different viewpoint in the universe, different perspective, same exact being. If you counter the universe, I mean, Zero was the first entity in all creation. When Zero decided to create himself, how, we don't know. From that point, it just set a chain effect. And from that, the rest of us were able to create ourselves, slowly gaining sentience over centuries. Living, dying, living, we're sentient energy. We don't exist through quite physical means. We're more literal, ethereal beings instead of physical, able to take on a meat suit lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, only coming in for games to prove a point since we can't harm each other or anything else. How else are we supposed to do that? And the ancients, as they were, they started getting bored um, near the beginning of things. So what they did is they started breaking themselves into pieces and fusing those pieces together to make different things. And they had games and fought over it for a very long time, creating these different spectrums of life, these different beautiful life forms, these all for different, either like survival of the fittest, straight up death games like battles. It could be an intellectual challenge. It varied lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, whatever the group decided was best to solve whatever was going on. But they would use physical life to do so, living constantly, just reborn into a new mass over and over and over again, existing outside, but being able to directly lock ourselves in.
So there are some ancients here with us today. Um, what what are they doing? Like, do they just walk around and like uh, randomly, manifest things or change things at their will, or is there a
It
purpose, or is
depends
there
on
a
each
gathering, or
one.
what's with the ancients?
The ancients that are being reborn in the flesh are all supposed to meet for a game, as always. They each one varies. I mean, some of us are living completely normally without trying to affect it, as we're spiritual big honchos and don't even show the physical world what's actually going on. Some of us are way deep into it, like myself, who's constantly battling and fighting against the flow, is feeling everything. I mean, everything in between. I mean, it just depends on each one of us you're talking about.
What about are there more ancients coming, or
The thing about that, from my understanding, is each of the ancients is a being that pretty much obtains a godhood through essence and existence. They become their highest dimensional selves and ascend to that purest point at a constant. And as each new one is grown, it changes and creates and forms a new fundamental law of the universe through each and every one, creating new abilities and new effects upon existence itself. Um,
So what is beyond the ancients? So next to the ancients, there are possibly
Next,
dark.
under them, I start going into like I use certain mythological creatures to understand, like say, power levels. Like under that would be like the Titans that ruled the land. They're giant physical beings that are of a higher dimension, but in this plane of existence. Think of the whole concept of Mother Earth being a giant humanoid, just curled up into a ball, as a lot of mythology creates. Gaia, it would be considered one of the Titans in this instance. That they are literal sentient, much larger beings that are able to affect stars, affect other planets, move at will, living giant physical masses being controlled by an energy source across the omniverse. Under the Titans, you would have the gods. There's numerous tier gods. Some of the gods are actually the ancients. Some in particular, some of the more powerful ones, but for the most part, through mythology, a lot of these so-called gods of, say, like even Norse mythology and things like that, angels and some of those gods would be considered on equal footing power-wise if it was a universe of pure everything was created from our manifestation and our abilities, given the same ability that God gave us, so to speak. Didn't God give us the ability to manifest, speak as Him, made in His image, so we could do the same as Him? And He created all of this, which means we can all grow to create all of this in a deeper sort of sense, and just how it's flowed century after century of us just reliving in these meat suits because we are ethereal form. We're beings of spirit, living over and over again in different bodies that die and never come back. It's perplexing, to say the least.
So what about people that aren't ancients and they're um, in a body? They might be younger spirits, or
Yeah, up the Garden of Souls, what happens to the energy is it's kind of like filtered through. It breaks apart, it comes together, breaks apart, it comes together. Sometimes it needs to be ground out, relayed to sit and heal. But it goes through this never ending process, flowing like a sea, from life to death in a spiritual sense, which exists simultaneously with our physical selves. And as it flows, say, for example, you were a bad person, you did a bunch of bad stuff, you go through a state of what is hell. An eternity, in all reality, lasts about a couple months. But you go to both to heaven and hell. You go to both based off of your karmic retribution. It's your equivalent. And each one is to show you a lesson, teach you a lesson, so you can grow and learn and become a better being and try to be that perfect sort that can ascend to that next level to become more of these lights that are bringing themselves back in to try to wake up more and grow more. This smaller and smaller spectrum as on the outside. They stopped fighting a while back, and everything's just been in chaos as all the pieces don't know what to do anymore. In the middle
so
of it.
where do the witches fit in?
Witches, well, when it really comes to witches, it's uh, anyone can be in a sense. Yes, there are certain bloodlines that are stronger for witches, but anyone that gets actually learned and
Okay,
focused and
well, we'll start with that. Start with the bloodlines and the witches that are the strongest ones that are born that way.
there's been a lot of families since before the Dark Ages that are more attuned to the natural state of energy. Um, and something you just inherit. Maybe they'll be more likely to be able to control the wind or a little bit of fire, or somehow they're controlling the water. I mean, and this is just a base, and just from their energy, they can actually slightly manipulate more than anybody else could, just from that sheer focus or that natural raw state of connecting to it. What we consider a witch is kind of infused into all of us in a sense. I mean, people use energy to try to heal somebody. They see somebody they care about and love, and they're in pain or they're dying or something. You put a hand on them and wish them well, even do a prayer to whatever entity you do, and that could potentially send an energy into them that could actually help physically heal wounds, due to the fact of just how healing energy can work. If it's condensed enough and strong enough, it can actually physically heal the human body. It's amazing and beautiful, but not very many have the capability to do it so rawly like that, like so natural.
So I hear a lot of people, they talk about praying for each other, and I'll pray for you and I'll pray for you, to where it gets to be where their prayers actually work. Okay. I do believe that their prayers actually work. So what makes the difference between someone who is just a simply prayer warrior to crossing over to the lines of the occult?
Well, it's all in intent. The prayer warrior, as you just claimed them, is more like they want to follow their teachings. They want to help out with their teachings, and they're following themselves, going with the flow. Say a witch is somebody that either goes against the fray a little bit or changes it entirely, changes the force of the flow of natural nature. But even then, it also comes down to which faith in particular you have, because of just the today's standards. I mean, you tell somebody you have, say, you're a Wiccan or something like that, and they're going to look at you and instantly be like, okay, then it's impossible for you to be a prayer warrior, when the reality is, even though they understand the elements and things like that, that's all they've ever done in the same sense, because they had the pure raw faith and meant good intention. It was able to be manifested into physical reality through the power we all have.
Okay. So a prayer warrior is basically just praying to their God and asking for a certain type of a miracle or things like that. And then when you actually cross into the occult, then you're actually going to take matters into your own hand, as if you were playing the role of God or creator, and effect those changes based on your energy and your attentions, and then what energy you can gather from other means, right? And is that when it turns into a cult, is when you actually
Once you
take.
start playing, once you start going, okay, then I cannot wait on the faith of said entity. I need to act on my own accord, and I need to do it on a regular instead of waiting. Supposed to be having this faith, and in those cases, they go and they'll do it themselves. They'll change those energies. They'll learn how to change it. I'm pretty sure it just started with one of the energies were just curious to what happens if you poke and prod, and do that long enough, century after century, to a being of energy, and you learn how to manipulate them in every possible conceivable way to get any results you want, just because you've known them long enough and know how they'll react.
Right. So you have, so then you move on to where you are now taking someone's fate or your own fate into your own hands, and you try to harness energies and intentions and emotions and whatever else. Where does the actual usage of things like candles and uh, whatever, people use, crystals or whatever other gadgets they use, like altars and things. What how does that make, work its way into the occult? And is that simply just dabbling, or is that truly the occult? And after dabbling, what happens if you don't get the results you want and you press for more and more and more? Is that when other entities come in, or different gods?
Yeah,
um,
a lot of the time,
at
the
what point
the
at
dark
what point
side,
are you still an ancient, possibly working as a witch?
or one of the
At what point
demonic
do
beings,
you
or some of the other
cross
entities that can
over?
be. No, but straight up freaking. When it comes down to all of this, I'm not even going to lie to you. Freaking, just the way it's connected is scary. You start off, you hate somebody, you want to curse their existence. So you wish hatred on them and hatred on them and hatred on them and hatred on them. And then this being from the universe made of pure hatred goes, are you trying to steal my job? It's my job to pass out the hatred to everyone. And will either try to recruit you for its cause in your afterlife to continue the flows of energy and change things. We're constantly going through a spiritual warfare. In the spiritual realm, we're literally killing each other off, fighting, warring, without even realizing it, as we're just physically going through the motion of day to day. I mean, those darker beings could be demons, ancients, angels in some cases,
Okay.
aliens. It all does exist. It's just it's in its own little corner, and it's always misunderstood. Even if you're given some sort of an idea of what it might be, it's always off from this fictional resort. And they pretty much have to tell us everything, and they use media to do it a lot. There's a lot of movies that have come out. It's real shit, and it's scary. It's maybe a recreation of that real shit, but that shit actually did happen, and it's getting scarier and scarier seeing what how we're just able to continue to go without realizing these are happening in small parts of our different world.
At what point does it go from being dabbling or using your own intentions to crossing over into the point of no return? Like, do you have to make a pact, like with a jinn or with a demon, and do you have to sell yourself? And then who are those kind of beings that work at that level? And like, is that it? Is that over after that? You've done crossed over the line?
There's a few enter, and even if you cross over the line, you're going to be stuck for a minute, but there is a way back out. Everything cycles through in natural phases. Pretty much the bottom line is are you going to use that intention for completely negative? Are you going to manipulate it and say no, this fucked up thing is going to happen, or no, this is going to happen? Technically, witchcraft is playing God in a sense, using your energy or capabilities. Anytime, in which case it is a possibility to do so, you are technically using witchcraft. And dabbling would be like, okay, I use this crystal because I want to find luck. um, Using that same crystal to force luck until the crystal shatters, and affecting and stealing it from the people around you is somebody who's using, like, say, darker witchcraft. And even if it's used for a good purpose, a lot of the time it's misunderstood because just talk about it is not supposed to happen. I mean, they're still burning witches in parts of the world. It's hard to have a conversation about it without fearing the crusades happening again. Even though it's the modern age, I don't want to be beheaded in the street just because of what I'm able to do. I'd rather just straight up think about healing and try to help people and try to show the world what's going on. I'm worried about the balance of the universe, not you're scared of me because I can do things. I'm sorry. I don't mean for that for anyone.
So, um, what happens when you make a pact with the devil? And are witches in cahoots with the devil, or is that is there a certain
Um,
type?
um, Individual by individual basis. Sometimes a being with no power that wishes to have power will make a pact with either a demon, which could be a higher demon, a lesser demon, or some sort of higher spiritual entity. They make deals and they gain that power spiritually, which starts affecting how they view things and do things, which can actually lead to some positive effects in their physical life, but it tends to manifest a lot of negative things upon the world. Um,
Okay, tell us about that. So
Most of these
how
demonic entities and things as such are trying to find a way to get their forms physically here. And they found if they steal enough emotion, they steal enough of our energy, get enough of our blood and hair, if they're able to get even just the tiniest bit of blood, why it's so sacred, they could literally transfer over and gain a physical form of their own. The more, the better. And they crave this. They crave to be in this world. I mean, most of these beings could literally feast off radiation. They view it as a snack. It could be useful, but they're going to be strong beings that not even a fucking tank shot's probably going to take out. Take somebody specialized, trained, knows what they're doing to be able to take out some of these demonic entities once they become physical beings. Becomes a very deadly affair in such cases. But it's hard to do. I wouldn't suggest it for anyone. If you want to go with summoning, please don't. That's just my suggestion.
Well, as part of the occult, what groups would do summoning? Like, would that be, who actually does the summoning? Like, what groups? What kind of people?
Those are you talking about your so some of your bigger darkers, freaking the cults that actually go around killing people. A lot of them are trying to do it to bring those beings forth, and then once they do, it takes control of, say, a host, or it has a form of its own, and hides itself in the world and tries to become big as it just feeds and feeds and feeds, trying to bring more and more in, like a takeover. They are physically here, they just hide so well, and it's kind of just scary.
Okay, so there's lower minions. There's Can you hear me good with this?
Yes, I can.
So there's like lower demons. There's mid demons. There's higher demons, and so the lower minions, they go out and they find people who are mad or angry or
They feed off their
desperate.
emotions. They get as strong as they can from feasting off of them. And the stronger they are, the better they are, the higher rank they are, the more they can achieve, the less punishment and pain they have to receive, and the more they have to cause.
Okay,
It's,
wait a minute. So they can feed off someone's energy and become something greater and move up hierarchically, or do they only have a certain level that they can do, and then they have to hand it over to a higher, more hierarchy-ish entity to take over? And then is that how a person gets possessed, and where an actual entity can manifest through that person?
those entities are born on a regular basis. They're made of darker emotions, and no, they can grow constantly. It's just, as I said, they're constantly killing each other off for whoever's top dog, whoever's got top seat is the winner, and
Tell us
everyone
about
got
that. Tell us
it.
who's holding the seats in the hierarchy of demons and other entities. What is
Whoever's
it?
devil at the time goes the devil. It goes the whichever four or the horseman at the time, and those are just like basic ranks, and then you got a couple different generals and corps, each one different elements, full on militaristic. They're trying to get into the physical world, but they're not quite. They're more or less ETs, but it's kind of scary. I keep saying that. Word of the night, kind of scary. Dummy me. No, it's bad. Each one has their own different abilities, and literally, the universe will have it. They'll go, and then the light and the darkness will fight. And some of the beings on those rosters are not the beings you'd expect. I mean, any religion in the world would not expect their particular god fighting on one side or another, even though in the end it's literally just down to element fighting each other. And it's happened before, and it'll happen again. It gets to this climax point where they all fight, they all try to learn a lesson, everybody seems to die, and then there's one or two left at the very end who just pick up the pieces, make everybody reborn, and they try again without having to have that battle, without having to have that war, over and over and over again. Living, dying. The universe, new Big Bang, new world similar to this, but slightly different. A lot of deja vu is actually caused by you reliving the essence of what was. And a lot of deja vus, something's different. It'll be an item different color, or something will be there or not because a choice was different, or something as such, because it's literally showing you a past event of something your energy specifically has done.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. um, so the term of devil is actually a seat or a title. It could exchange hands in the
Yeah.
what and what realm are the devils and demons living in?
Well, it's pretty much what we consider the darkness. It's the void. They sit in this other plane. It's the antimatter realm. It's the opposite of ours. It's our mirror image. It's all kind of the same, and it's chosen this darker sort of feel. It feeds off that darkness instead of light, as a kind of reverse. In that realm, there's a couple different versions of them as they askew. They are energies literally becoming more and more negative, trying to destroy themselves. And if the reaction continues, they will actually cause a force which could potentially kill us as energy. There is a way to die. It just takes a lot of force and will to do so, just as energy can be created, but in the same sort of sense. It takes a lot to do so, and you have to know how. At least that's what I've
So
learned
the
from my.
beings in the antimatter are actually trying to destroy themselves, or
That's where they would, on a physical sense, that's the type of world that they would live in. But in their sense, they, don't work that way with us. When they come through here, they have to literally gain an entirely new form, reborn into this world due to that fact. Um, and that takes a lot of sacrifice to not just make it to where it's a quick boom. But if they do get here physically, they're able to, as I said, there is absorb radiation. They'll feed off people. They'll eat and they'll eat and they'll eat. Just a little bit of radiation will turn a tiny baby one, and it'll make it grow up fast. A picture kind of like a dragon, from mythology, how it's when it's born, it's tiny and little, but it can continuously grow and grow and grow, and the older it is, the more powerful it is. Same sort of idea as a species.
okay, so we were talking about witches and the occult and the different levels that you go up. And then now, what is the difference between a Satanist and a devil worshiper?
Religion, pretty much. Most Satanists, in their particular path is, they're not actually worshiping demons as a such, say. I mean, they kind of do, but not quite in the same sense of I'm going to go do this evil things. They're more help thy brother, rules to live by, same kind of stuff going on as most religions. I mean, most religions have these specific little things connecting one to the other. It just depends on what the individual is accepting of, is which one they would more or less fit in. That one is,
Which
okay, I
ones
want to
are?
destroy the darker beings versus I want to feed the darker beings.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Say that again. I want you to say that one more time and explain it just a little bit more. So there's
Okay, one group would be the lesser. They want to befriend these darker beings. They want to understand the universe a little better. They and then this other group, which is a little bit darker,
well,
they
wait,
want
hold
to
on.
feed these darker
Would
beings.
the first hold on. Would the first group want to use these beings as um, friend them and then use them?
And then they end up being used a lot, but they don't get used as much as the ones that are trying to feed these beings, because they're giving more and more power within these beings from themselves.
Okay. So then they're trying to feed these beings. In what way would they feed a being, and what would they get out of it?
Well, these beings could manipulate, lie. They could say anything. They could say, I could give you power. I could give you this desire you wish. I could help you be this. I could do this for you. I could make this situation happen. They'll use any excuse to try to just feed in and get a willing source of more power, more energy, more essence. They're like bottom feeders or parasites that live on us in another dimension that can affect us mentally.
So I have a question. So when people decide to get into the occult and they want to gain power so that they can effect changes in their lives, isn't there like a an anti-effect, like karma that might have happened instantly?
Oh yeah,
So
I
if
mean
they're
a
trying
lot.
to if they're trying to pretend to be a creator god or be God in essence, and then they try to push out some kind of intention, do they not get it come back at them in the maybe a times three? Is that a rule that whatever you push out you get back three times, or?
Karma is a thing that is one of the rules of the universe. But at the same time, sometimes yes, they do get their instant karma. Sometimes they pay for it later, and sometimes they receive no karma. If they receive no karma, that means they needed to exist in order to change somebody for the better, and it was the will of karma itself that allowed it. That's why
Oh,
it's hard
so
to
like
say in that.
karma can use people to in effect karma.
Yes, karma can enact itself upon people, and it'll use people as, hey, give me a hand real quick to do this because I am that force telling you, hey, no, it's okay. I know you want to do this. I know it's a little messed up. And then that person goes and whoops, say that other person's ass, and they get rewarded for it. And people just look at them strange. It's because they were enacting it upon karma, and that other person truly did deserve it. But you'll get warning beforehand. It just depending on the universe will normally tell you before that situation comes up.
Okay, I get that, I get that, and then say, what about if the beings stop you from doing the things that you're trying to do? If they just go completely against fate, would you actually have beings preventing you from enacting havoc or doing something of that nature?
Um, not really. Kind of from my understanding, what the world's done is they've taken the most powerful and they've either been like, okay, you're now in a seat of power, to where we go, okay, just don't destroy us all, make you happy for certain specific individuals, but for the most part, they kill off anyone that doesn't fit their particular agenda that they're going through. They'll just make them disappear or seem like an accident or a suicide or something like that, and it just turns sour quick.
So, do people in the occult move up the hierarchy in the spirit world?
Yeah, a lot of the times, the further you get into some cults, the darker and darker of a being you're going to become once you get to those seats of power or get connected with these darker groups that are just like Hydra from Marvel. They're integrated, but not everybody knows about it. They're pulling from strings here and there, but they're not. They don't exist, but they tell you what to do.
So now, once you start going up the ladder in the spirit world, and these entities are obeying your every command, like the jinn, don't they turn on you at some point? At some point, they're just using you and
Oh,
your
they've
body
been
to
using
try
you
to
from the
do
get go.
their work.
They'll do anything to get what they desire. They'll lie, manipulate, cheat, change your reality, give you hallucinations, attack you, drain your life force, give you darker gifts, where for a time being, you can do something that's superhuman, but it disappears after a certain period of time. All things are actual possible. When getting gifts from some of these darker beings, you don't exactly need them to have power or to do anything. Sometimes it just takes focus and growth. It's a skill that can be growed, learned, and mastered, and it doesn't take making some deal with the devil to be able to say heal somebody spiritually or slightly manipulate an element. That's something that I'm pretty sure anyone could learn if they took the time, took it seriously, and had belief in themselves, and did it, and learned and mastered it, like a monk, meditating, focusing, practicing on a constant level until they're able to truly do these things for somebody that wouldn't know it.
So now let's flip the coin. Now is it the same exact hierarchy and same exact repercussions as using light energy, or with what one might say good intentions, or is it any intentions going against someone's will considered dark?
That's kind of where it gets a good gray line. If it goes against somebody's will, but it doesn't mean to harm anyone, it could be considered gray sometimes. And just as I said, for the dark, there's a vice versa light version of that. So these higher ascended light beings that also have their armies and plays, as well as the darker ones. And same thing. A funny secret of the universe. The devil and the one that leads the dark army and the one that leads the light army switched sides a long time ago.
Well, say that again.
A funny secret of the universe: the one who is supposed to lead the dark army and the one who is supposed to lead the light army switched places a long time ago. It's what inspired the yin yang in the first place.
Wow. So both the light and the dark work together. Is it is
In
it
secret tandem. It's a horse and pony show. It's all just trying to keep this balance, because without both forces, the universe falls apart. It can't keep its structure. It starts failing. It's like if you go in and fuck up with the code of a program that's supposed to create a room that a character can walk in. Well, what happens if you take away that collision? Ah, it falls. What happens if you take away this asset? Boom, there's nothing left. All you're left with is that single character model. You see what I'm saying?
Well, then what constitutes light and dark? I mean, it seems to me that if you, no matter, it's all the same energy. If you're going to use it against the will of someone else, whether you think it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. You're still going against their will or their fate. What if somebody approached you and said, "Could you pray for me?" Or "Could you ask your angels to help me heal?" Would that then become more considered white magic or white, you know, and is that considered occult?
There is such a thing as a white magic occult and a black magic occult, and they're two separate groups. Um, they mirror each other, but for the most part, the darkness is the stronger, bigger ties. The light is barely succeeding because they're not allowed to flourish as strongly, and it's creating somewhat of an imbalance. It's like the idea of the Jedi and the Sith. They both exist, and they both, in their own sense, is these spiritual warriors that are going out trying to change things for, say, good or bad, for just the sake of either chaos or harmony. It's a game. It's almost as if these two different forces are being like, "How I bet you I can get more people than you can on my side." It's almost as if these two entities, that's what they've been doing this whole time.
So now, briefly, we got about 5 minutes, and I kind of wanted you to go over energy work a little bit, and then we have kind of an announcement to make. So tell me about energy work, and what if we just were doing energy work to heal ourselves and not necessarily putting intentions towards anyone else? Would is what Is that safe, or what do you think
Uh,
about that?
it depends on the way you do it, because there's certain ways that are not, there's like 4 or 5 forms of ways that I know of that you can spiritually heal, and in one of them you literally take the life force from others to you. You could be focusing on yourself, but you'd be harming others without realizing it, just using your natural energies, because that's what you are. You're a predator, not prey spiritually. Just like the animal kingdom, spiritually there is a food chain. One feeds off the other and the next, and without that continual spiral, it doesn't seem to be. Energy work is, it's as simple as holding your hands together and just trying to focus your energy into a small point. I mean, it's feeling that energy that your body gives off, that electromagnetic field, and being able to control it, to move it with your mind, having the willpower and control to change that and do that, mixing the two and then mastering it. And then from there, you're able to turn that into either, say, pure healing energy, like, say, Reiki, using some of your own life force to do so. Because each and every energy, art, or magic, as it's called, comes at a price. You have to pay for each ritual in some way, either karmically or physically or through an item or an event happening, but they're always paid for no matter what you do. You're only given so much to begin with, and how you use it is up to you as an individual.
Um, Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. So, do you feel like everyone should be mastering their own energy and their own chi and trying to keep up a certain energy level and manipulating and learning how to work within their own aura?
I think if nothing else, people should learn to feel it so they can learn to defend against other people using it on them. I believe everyone should learn to at least feel and get basic understanding of it, knowing, okay, this is a part of myself too, and it can affect me constantly through my emotions, my feelings, my thoughts, even. You know, if it gets hurt, I may physically feel a pain, even though it doesn't happen to me physically. I feel like I just got stabbed or something like that because somebody else did something to you. Or as such, it's being able to feel it a little better means maybe you can learn to put up defenses and
Okay.
help stop people from using your energy against your will for something that you're not okay with. Just for
So
example.
there's definitely ways to know when someone's trying to attack you in those ways, right?
Yes. A lot of the times they'll try to find a direct way to you. They'll either try to psychically talk to you, or get a piece of your hair or blood, or keep a picture of you, something they can use to focus on you, and they'll use that to try to get a direct link to you. I mean, it can be as simple as that for a lot of these cases. Anything that gives them a stronger link to you directly means the more damage somebody can do. So even that can become quite an issue at times.
So you could be getting attacked on a daily basis and not even know it. I mean, you might just feel sick or weird or drained.
Yep, or random pains here or there out of nowhere. You're in perfect health, and all it could be is somebody literally taking the time and manifesting that darker energy to be like, okay, then I hate you. Feel this. Feel this. Feel this. Feel this. Because of whatever selfish reason that individual has. And we're all capable of it, whether we realize it or not. Even just thinking about someone in such a dark way on a repetitive basis can cause that to actually happen, and that other person to feel said things, even though maybe they don't physically happen. They feel the pain of it and they go through the experience of it, even though they just continue living their lives physically. The spiritual world is something I think we all need to learn about a bit, so we can try to fix and bring balance to both simultaneously. Because I do believe we are multidimensional beings.
Well, that's going to wrap up part 5 of the occult. We talked about witches. We talked about spiritual hierarchy, demons. We talked about protecting yourself, or um, we talked about white magic, or all kinds of things. So, would you be willing to give classes about energy work to help people to identify their own energy and then how to protect themselves from attacks?
Yeah, I would. The only problem is that's not exactly a class I could give online. Have to be something I'd have to go individual by individual, try to attune your energies, and use different practices to help the individual learn and grow and feel for the first time in some cases. I'd still have to hammer out the details, but I would
Okay.
like to do that. I'm more than happy to help somebody to stop themselves from getting attacked in the future. Say somebody maybe that doesn't know about it but is constantly being attacked and they want to learn to feel it so they can stop what's going on. Even something as simple as that. I'd love to be helpful.
Okay. Well, let's wrap it up tonight, and then let's start working on some sort of event, and then we'll post that soon, where they can get in touch with you, and you can work with them and things like that. So that's going to be it for now. Thanks again for a really great discussion, Six, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Y'all
All
have a good
right.
one.
Have a great night.
You too.